Hello, friends. Welcome to Coding Garden. Welcome to this launch of my new course, React Roots. I'm just going to be answering any questions you might have. We'll basically just kind of do a Q&A. If you have questions about React, TypeScript, if you just want to say hello, that's okay too. But if you haven't heard of it, React Roots is a course that teaches the basics of building single-page web applications with React and TypeScript. This was originally a live course, so if you tuned in, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago here on Twitch, all of those lessons were being broadcast live to watch free on Twitch, but there was also a class of paying students that got access to resources and stuff like that. So basically, now you can get access to all those materials, so that way you can take the course at your own pace. And good afternoon, Madeline. Welcome in. What's up, BD guy? And Pinkman says, just followed your Mac setup video. Nice, appreciate that. I'll share it in the chat if anybody hasn't seen it. I posted this earlier in the year when I was setting up my MacBook, and I just run through all the stuff I use, all the apps and everything else that I use on my Mac. So you can check that out there. But yeah, this is the course. I'll welcome everybody in before we talk more about it. But if you do have a question, we'll use Vox today. So in the chat, if you have a question about React, TypeScript, or the course, !ask followed by your question. I'll do my best to answer it. And if you want to learn more, reactroots.com has all the info. And then also I just published a video on YouTube that also gives a rundown of how the course works. That's this video here. This is not your average course. This isn't a code along. Basically, I have materials that I present to you. You should read the pre-lesson reading materials that I provide. You should watch the lesson, take notes, and then I have exercises for you to practice. And then there's also some project requirements where basically you can take everything that you learned in the first 7 lessons and then apply it to a real-world app. So this isn't the kind of course where you just follow along exactly with what I'm doing and just type out the code exactly. Basically, I introduce you to all of the fundamental concepts and techniques, and I have lots of exercises where you can practice those. And then the project itself, you can take everything you learned and actually apply it in context to a larger app. So I think this is pretty different than a lot of the other video courses that are out there. So I'm pretty proud of it. But welcome in, everybody. Let's say hi to everybody. And if you don't have questions, maybe we'll just write some React code. Maybe we could just do a to-do app for people that are newer to React. And you can see my teaching style. We'll see what questions come in. But if you'd like to say hello in the chat, you can say hi, hello, hey, yo, cheers, greetings, hi, us up, what's up, morning, afternoon, howdy, good day, coding, hi-yo, vo-hi-yo, boga-hey, or any one of those things. I will acknowledge you. PubPlip was the first to say hello 16 minutes ago. What's up, PubPlip? Welcome in. And who else we got? What's up? Username? I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, and Fallen Learns was asking about the effects that I use on this screen. So I'm like pixelated. And it's also like a CRT screen. Actually, it would be pretty cool. Let me show you. I think I can take the effects and like turn them off and on one by one. Yeah, so there's the pixelation effect. It's actually a shader using stream effects. Like it's me, and then it like pixelates it. I can also like adjust the amount of pixelation, like a lot of like super pixelated, or just like a little bit. And then this shader effect adds the scan lines like this. So it looks like an old TV, and then this one makes it curved, so it looks like an old CRT TV. Yeah, what's up, Timon? The messages typically are only from like whenever I launch the app instead of like the entire history of it, but that's why. So yeah, I have a bunch of effects on that scene. But what's up, Fallen Learns and Art Pajan and America 2050, and hello, Stas and Griffin and BD Guy. What's up, Madeline and W Fater and Default. What's up, It's by Ethereal and System Win, and hello, WBW and Sipping Tears, and hello, El Ovejo Sanchez. Hello. What's up, Timon? Welcome in, everybody. Glad to see you. We could do, you know what? Let's just do it really quick to see what it looks like. Add like a black and white effect. Let's see. Filters. I mean, I think if I this doesn't even have to be a shader. This could just be like a an color grading, color correction. Let's see what color correction does for us. Yeah, no saturation, full saturation. I mean, that looks almost like sepia tone or sepia tone. I don't know if I like it though. I'm gonna turn it off. No, so I use a left-handed mouse, but I'm right-handed. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know what I should do. So like, I have the pixelation. I also could do a blur effect instead. So let's instead of that, I like some kind of blurring. I actually want to make it look worse than it is. But like I did the pixelation because it's kind of like pixel art, and I like pixel art, but it's not exactly pixel art. I don't know. I don't know. Um, that's really big. This. um, but yeah, so I use a left-handed mouse. You can see over on the frequently asked questions, there's like a link to the gear page as well. But I started using a left-handed mouse like I think 10 years ago at this point. Um, and because I was getting pain in my right wrist. I am right-handed, so now I just use a left-handed mouse, and it keeps the amount of irritation in my right wrist down. But this is the thing that I use. It's a giant vertical vertical mouse. Yeah, you're left-handed, but you use a right-handed mouse. I feel like there's probably a lot more of you that do that. More of you, you left-handers. Um, just because the world is like made for right-handers, you know. Yes, a lot of things can work as a hammer if you really want them to. Cool. You all are not very chatty today, so let's just build a React app. I think I'll spin up a React app. We'll just do like um kind of a to-do app, but we'll come up with something to add to our list instead of to-dos. And you can ask me anything you want along the way as we build. But again, this is basically just an advertisement for my course because if I don't sell enough of these, you're not going to see me anymore. Basically, this is how I'm going to make my living. And I guess I haven't mentioned it yet, but the course is $35. So $35 gets you access to about 16 hours of video, all of the course materials and everything else. So yeah, and welcome in, Coder Girl. Glad to see you. A simple task tracker? That could be fun. Yeah. Whoever knows your team today, Game and Watch? It doesn't look familiar to me. Yeah, I don't actually know what that is. But yeah, let's get going. So I'm going to use Vite to generate a React app. And this is what I teach in the course. And a Trello clone. Can we build a Trello clone in like under an hour? I don't know if we can. A nice SC So they're left-handed, but learn to use a right hand for the mouse so you could still write with your left hand. I mean, when you think about it, that's like ultimate multitasking. I didn't even think about that because I could technically use my left hand for the mouse and then like take notes with my right hand. But you have the opposite. But yeah, that works. The course is beginner friendly. So if you look at reactroots.com, I have a list of things you should know before taking the course. And so in this section, who is the course for, there's a big long list of things that you should know how to do. Now, I mean, beginner is always relative, right? If you've built websites with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you have the background knowledge required to jump into React and TypeScript. And basically what I'm saying is if you know all of these things in this list and you have experience doing all of these things in this list, then you're ready for what I teach in the course. And so if you don't know these things, I'm not going to cover them in the course. But if you do know these things, I do my best to take you from knowing this stuff to building with React and TypeScript. Yeah. Red Crystal says, I had a technical interview to do an input with autocomplete similar to Google's with hard-coded data. Yeah, that's honestly like a really good interview question. True Narlo actually did a what do you call it? A YouTube video on it. And she showed it's not what I was looking for. This. And this this video.
You're a front-end engineer.
But she walks through like actually like why that's a good interview question. So I think they do debouncing, they do autocomplete, a bunch of other stuff as well. Yeah, thanks, Johnny Jama. I appreciate that. I think that's the other thing is like, I know a lot of people potentially already know React or don't want to learn React, and they're also probably annoyed that I'm even still talking about this. But basically, what you can do if you want to help me out is just share it with people. So if there's someone in your life that potentially wants to learn React and TypeScript, share this with them because they might get some use out of it. Make the animation capture from the live view. Not sure what you mean by that. Into the next guy. Oh, like convert it to what looks like an animation? Is that what you're saying? That would require some kind of shader or effect. Yeah. Yeah, and so like envs work with Vite, but like it's technically it's still front end code. I mean, if you want to get access to those environment variables, they make it very explicit that you basically have to prefix it with all caps Vite, because if you don't, then it won't get leaked into your build. But if you prefix an environment variable with Vite, then it will show up in the build. Yeah. Oh, I'm using what is it called? Enhancer for YouTube. I think they have this. You can install this for Chrome and Firefox. I use Firefox, but in there's a setting for theme, and I have mine set to YouTube green dark, so I can have like all these nice cool green colors because this is the coding garden. You know. Oh, thank you, Coder Girl. Appreciate that. Converting it, yeah, that'd be fun if we could find the right shader or the right plugin. That could be interesting to do like a what do you call it? A animation style or animation effect. Yeah, and I don't know. I guess it depends, but let's make a Vite app. So in the course, we use Vite to generate our React apps. It is a build tool. In lesson 1 of the course, we talk about what a build tool even is and why we need one, but we're jumping ahead. We're just going to straight up do it. We're just going to call this our list app because we're going to create lists of something, and users are going to be able to manage that list. And so with the Vite CLI, you can choose what you want to use. In our case, we want to use React, and we want to use TypeScript. Thank you, Alejandro. Appreciate that. And let's go. Let's work on the app. So after you generate it with Vite, you need to install the dependencies, first step. And then after you have the dependencies, you can start it up with npm run dev. Like that. Boom. So now you have a Vite and React app. Let's open this up in VS Code and kind of clean some stuff up. So by default, they give you like this React asset, like this React logo. Let's just delete that. They give you a bunch of styles. I'm going to delete those. The index.css, I'm going to wipe out completely. And then in the app, we're basically going to wipe everything out except for like a little hello world. And then I'll explain kind of what all this stuff is doing. So this is our app component. It has an H1. It just says hello world. I think that's what we want to do. And so now if we look in the browser, it just says hello world and we're ready to go. First thing is, for like the first week of the course, we actually don't do any sort of custom styles because I believe you should focus on the things that you're learning at the time. And so if you try to intermix like working on styles and layout, like you're basically taking away from learning React and TypeScript. So we just use a thing called Pico CSS, which is a bunch of default styles. And you don't have to add any classes. So if you just add the link to your page, you instantly get like a dark mode and a light mode, and you don't have to add any custom styles. So I'm going to add this right here in the HTML. And now, look at that. It changed the font. It gave me a background color, a dark background color. And that's mainly because I have dark mode as my preferred color scheme. But if you view this and you don't have dark mode, then it would actually show up as light mode. But in the course, we use this for like the first week just because I want you to focus on React. I don't want you to focus on or like mess with styles at all. So here, if I give this a class of container, that gives us a little bit of breathing room on the edges there. Yeah, and I appreciate the default. Yeah, default was actually in the live course, but yeah, that's the main reason. It's like, I mean, in a way, like there's a lot of reasons why you would choose something like Pico or any other CSS framework. I mean, sometimes it could just be I don't want to write the styles, but from a learning perspective, there's just so many things, and when you try to mix them all together, like it takes away from what you're actually trying to learn. So that's one of the things I tried to focus on in the course is like we very explicitly are trying to learn a thing, and that's what we focus on. I might publish it to Udemy. The thing about Udemy is typically people, at least from what I've seen, all of the videos are like short 5 to 10 minute videos. For this course, it's a bunch of 2-hour videos. Now, I do have a breakdown of what's taught in every lesson. So if you look at like lesson 1, you can actually see these are all the topics that I cover. And so like technically I could break up this 2-hour video into what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, into like 8 separate videos. And then similarly, like every single but every video I do list out like these are the learning objectives, and they're kind of like all in context to each other. So I think you probably can post longer videos on Udemy. I think it depends. Honestly, like if I don't sell as much directly through here, I might try posting on Udemy. But for now, I'm gonna try to sell through here and through SuperPeer. Because they have really good pricing model, and they're only taking 10% of every sale, and plus transaction fees. Whereas Udemy, I think sometimes takes like 50% of the sale or whatever else. What's up, good looking? My mustache scared your dog. Well, why is your dog looking at the TV screen? Tell your dog to go take a nap. So yeah. Yeah, so today I'm just using Pico. That's what America 2050 has. So this just gives us some basic styles. We don't even have to worry about styles. We're going to focus on React. Chuchunis is asking, I heard that in new dev positions, when they inspect your code, they don't want to see divs. They want to see fragments, sections, header, and footer. Is it really that important? So what you're talking about here is more about like semantic HTML. And then also just the general idea that maybe you don't want a parent container, you want to use a fragment. But it all depends on the situation. In this situation, it makes sense to have a div right here. Like if we wanted to use semantic HTML, this probably would be a section instead of a div. That's a thing, and it works the same way. But I think what you're more getting at is the idea of semantic HTML, and so all of the elements whose name kind of describes what the thing does, that's semantic HTML. So sections, articles, header, footer, picture, details, summary, any of the HTML elements that like describe what the thing is, that's semantic HTML. Now, I wouldn't say that not everyone does this. Not everyone really cares. The thing is, semantic HTML typically helps with accessibility. It's not the only thing you need for accessibility, but it can help with accessibility and for like screen readers and stuff like that. But typically pages will still work without it. And a lot of times if you end up using like a CSS framework like Bootstrap or something like that, you kind of end up with like div soup. You just end up with like divs everywhere. But it really comes down to like the team, what you're trying to do. But it's not necessarily required, and it's not done everywhere. So I would say it's important. I think especially the accessibility aspect of it, but I feel like it's way less popular. Like there are a lot of teams that actually don't even care about semantic HTML. So yeah, it's like a uni class in a full semester. Oh, you mean what Udemy is? Yeah. No, and that's true as well. Like I think that's some of the feedback I might get about the current React Roots course is like the videos are too long, and then like maybe you lose your spot or something like that. But I think that's the other thing about like existing courses is like they try to, I think, also appeal to like short attention spans, and also they try to make you feel like you're learning because like, oh, you can watch a 5-minute video and like, oh, you feel accomplished. But I talk about it in the intro of the course, and also in like the overview video. The only way you can really say that you learned a thing is if you can do it without help, like without watching the video, without looking at any references or resources. Can you do the thing that I ask you to do in the exercises without referencing anything? And if you can, then that means you actually learned it. And so that's what I try to really drive home in the course. But I feel like with shorter videos, people might get caught in the trap of like, oh yeah, I'll just watch a 5-minute video here, a 5-minute video there, and then they'll never actually practice. And I want to avoid that too. So I don't know. What's up, Goldman? Welcome in. And Finder the Ice Wing, glad to see you. Yeah. Am I looking for a protege? I'm not. I've actually done in the past. We called it Newbie Tuesdays, where I paired with a complete and total noob. His name was Tony, and we did a lot of beginner related stuff. And I sort of molded him into a developer, I guess. He actually works as a dev now, but he did some other things for a long time, and then he actually went and got a I think he tried to get a computer science degree and didn't stick with it, but then he went to a code school and learned Java, and now he's actually working as a dev. So that's a thing. Yeah, picture is the one for images, yeah. What would div soup taste like? I don't know. Yeah. And so to answer Chuchunia's question earlier, I mean, you really should look into semantic HTML. Because that's the thing you're talking about when we're saying like section and article and stuff like that. Like these are all the semantic elements, and this has nothing to do with React, because you would just do this in your HTML outside of React, or in your React components you could potentially use semantic elements. But yeah, okay. I'm glad you figured it out, Fallen Learns, but yeah, I don't know. All right, let's build an app. I want to manage a list of things. Now, do we want to manage like a Trello board? I feel like that could get way too complicated. Fragments don't make the page faster. No, that's just a whether or not you want the elements to have a parent container or not. So like right now, I have this section, and I want that parent container to have a class on it. So that's why I've used that. But if I were to use a fragment here, a fragment cannot have class names. And if I used a fragment, then it would actually just render the H1 inside of it directly. So like this, now you see there's only an H1, there's not a parent. So it doesn't make it faster. It's just, it depends on the situation. Like, do you need a parent element? And if you don't want a parent element, especially for like layout and styling, then you would just use a fragment. Yeah. No, I think we'll just make a list of something. Give me some ideas in the chat. It could be a list of movies we want to watch, a list of books we want to read, a list of Pokemon we want to catch, a list of coding, a list of YouTube videos that we want to watch. What are some things that could be in our list? It could be a list of grocery items that we need, like that. We could just add a list of maybe programming languages that you know. Ones that you know, and maybe ones that you want to learn. Top 10 YouTube channels. I kind of like a grocery list, honestly, because it'll be simple enough, but it's like it's a to-do app in disguise, right? Your grocery list is a to-do list for your grocery shopping. List of NPM packages, cutest dogs. Think like, oh yeah, wish lists that you want for your birthday. Yeah. Which router is better, browser router or hash router? Take the course and you'll find out. I actually do talk about it. So in the lesson where I talk about React router, I actually break down how a front end single page application router works. And then I talk about the differences between hash routing and browser router. Now, there's not a definitive answer. You could just say browser router, but it's nuanced. It's more nuanced than that. So if you use browser router, you get clean URLs. However, depending on how you deploy your application, if you use browser router, you potentially will have to configure the deployment so that all requests get redirected to the index page. If you use hash routing, you can deploy anywhere. You wouldn't have to do any sort of configuration. Now, it depends on the kind of app that you're building. It depends on, do you need clean URLs? If you look at the React router documentation, they recommend use browser router, but they also mention that you're going to need to what's the word? I can't find the section. I forget the section. But they mention you're going to need to configure your deployment. So a lot of the times, like I build React apps that I want to very easily deploy without any configuration on the server or the CDN wherever I'm deploying to. And so in that case, I just use HashRouter. But depending on what you're building, you might want and need clean URL, so then you would use browser router. Yeah. Yeah, I use HashRouter because it's really easy to deploy. We're gonna do a list of grocery. We're gonna do a grocery list. I think that's gonna be the easiest. But I did a YouTube video a long time ago. I called it 101 ways to deploy a React app. Let's find that Git repo, because in the README I actually talk about all the different ways you might deploy a static app, and if you're using browser router, the configuration that you need to do. So if you deploy to Netlify, there's a setting to do the redirect. If you deploy to Surge, there's a file or a setting to do the redirect. This is back before Vercel was renamed. Well, back before Vercel was Vercel, it used to be called now.sh. There was also some settings there for doing a redirect. And then basically, I don't want to have to configure the deploy, right? So that's why I use the hash router, but it's nuanced. You can't just say only use browser router, because there are scenarios where you actually don't care about clean URLs, and hash router is going to be a lot easier to deploy. And it's like a little bit deceiving, because if you redirect all requests to your index.html, now if there's like a legitimate 404, it actually happens as a 200 status code that you then just show a not found for. So it's like really weird if you use browser router and then like you have to do the redirects and stuff like that. Yeah, then.sh, now. I guess that's true. It is then.sh. All right, we're gonna make a grocery list, and this is gonna be a place for us to manage all of our groceries. Yeah, I need to redo it with a more modern take on it, right? Because yeah, Vercel has a new name. There's other ways to deploy static apps. I need to do that. Can we add categories like produce and dry goods? Possibly, as like a stretch feature. MVP, list of groceries that I can remove to the list and add to the list, and like maybe check off to say that yes, we bought that thing. Stretch feature, categorize the groceries. All right. Step one for this grocery list is we want to be able to see a list of groceries. All right, let's handle that. So what happens with the Chrome's copy link to highlight? I have no idea what you're talking about, Goblin. So I talk about it in the course, and I actually talk about the underlying mechanisms of like how React Router even works when it's running in the browser. But a good example of this is if you look at the JavaScript, or look at any page on Wikipedia, and if you look at the table of contents, any one of these links is a link within the web page. So you can see when I click that, it basically scrolls down. If I click here, it scrolls down. Or if I click this, it scrolls back up. This is a mechanism that has existed in web browsers for a very long time. And it's basically just IDs. You can see the hash here, and the thing after the hash corresponds to an ID. So if I look at this element, then this element has an ID, other underscore usage. And so if this matches up, the browser just navigates to that. So single page application routers take advantage of that and basically tap into the event whenever the hash changes and then change what's displayed on the page. So that is how hash router works. Browser router uses the history API. All right. So we want to see a list of groceries. We need a list of things that we want to show on the page. So let's actually make a list of things. So we're going to say our groceries. Groceries. This is going to be an array with objects in it that have all of our grocery items. So each item is going to have a name. Like I want some apples. And then maybe we also specify the quantity. So I want to get 2 apples, and then we need to know, have we got it yet or not? So we'll have purchased, and this will be a Boolean that starts off as false, but then once we check it off, then it'll get marked as true. Also, we're going to need some unique IDs. So I'm just going to call this ID 0, and then let's add something else to the grocery list. We need to give it a unique ID, so this is going to be ID 1. And then we will buy some bananas. And I want 5 bananas because I need 1 for every day of the week. I have been really good lately. I've been eating granola, not granola, oatmeal and a banana every morning for like the past at least 3 weeks. So, and then on the weekends I eat like random stuff, but I eat 5 bananas a week. So when I go to the grocery store, I need to buy 5 bananas, 2 bunches of bananas. Well, yeah. Okay. So let's do this, and then yeah, I guess we could also jump into type. We'll do a little bit of TypeScript later, right? Because if you're absolutely new to this, I think if we jumped into TypeScript immediately, that would be a little bit overwhelming. So we're gonna do our best to gradually build this thing up and like talk as we go. This is enough. So these are the groceries that I want to buy at the grocery store. Let's show them on the page. Now, right now I just have a variable, and this is a list. It's an array that has a bunch of objects inside of it. And so I think someone asked, is that multiple arrays in one const? This is multiple objects in one array. And in the course, I also talk about modern JavaScript. So modern JavaScript brought us things like const and let, which are new ways to define variables. And in this case, I have defined this as a const because I'm not going to be reassigning it. So if later on, if I were to try to do groceries equals a new array, JavaScript complains because you cannot reassign a constant variable. So I made this a constant so that I cannot reassign it. Now that's different than being modified. So you basically you can't reassign it. You can't put something new into it. So you can't do this with a const. But if it's a reference type like an object or an array, you can still call methods on it that might actually change it internally. So like I could push in another item here. And this is actually absolutely okay. And actually, TypeScript is now helping us. So I think this is actually like a gentle introduction to TypeScript because we defined this grocery array with 2 different objects in it, and both of those objects look exactly the same, right? They have all of the same properties, except the values are different, right? But it's the same properties: ID, purchase name, and quantity. TypeScript is now helping us out. It knows that ahead of time, but now down here it's like, hey. When you define this array, every single object had all of these properties. So down here, it's like, hey, you're missing all these properties that I inferred that you should have. So TypeScript is actually helping us out here because it's like we can actually get some autocomplete as to what are the other things that need to exist here. So, and it also tells us, hey, purchase needs to be a Boolean. So that's pretty cool. And then like name needs to be a string. So what else do we want to get? Dog snacks. And then how many do we want? Just one of them. But this is a const variable. It cannot be reassigned, but it technically can be internally changed. If we wanted to reassign it, we would use a let variable. But I think my editor basically says, yeah. So, and I have a linter that gives us a bunch of rules that say, hey, if you're never going to reassign something, just use const instead. So that's that. I met someone who didn't know about var. We're about at that time, right? So like the thing is, modern JavaScript started happening in 2015, which at this point is 8 years ago. Is that true? 7, 8 years? Really? Time flies. However, there are still a lot of people that don't know about the more modern features of JavaScript, which is why I still call it modern JavaScript, even though technically it started to get introduced in 2015, and there have been new features introduced every year since then. But yeah, I think we're at a point where a lot of people just probably have never heard of var because they just learned const and let first. Yeah. And Mark Boots, thank you for the resub. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's useless. I would say like the way that we use it in JavaScript is to indicate intent. So my intent here is that the variable never gets reassigned. And so later on, if someone were to see this without seeing the variable declaration, they potentially know, or even if they don't know, like if they tried to write code like this, then it basically will yell at them that said, hey, you've tried to reassign this. So other programming languages don't use const in this way. For other programming languages, const is like an actual constant, like the value of pi, something that's like never changing. But in JavaScript, we use it to indicate intent of like intended usage of the variable. Yeah, it's not frozen for sure. Yeah, what's up, Nathan? Yeah, I mean, I could update the what we're doing right now command, but basically I'm answering any questions that you might have. But once we got started, nobody had any questions, so I'm just writing some React code and then answering any questions that you might have as we go. But basically, we're building a little list of grocery items. But Yeah, we're talking about my course. Everything is in context to the course. This is an ad for my course, and I'm building a React app, talking through it. I'm just showing you my teaching style because you may not have seen me teach before. You may have just heard about this course, so you're getting a taste of what it's like to learn from me. And right now we're making a little React app that will let us manage a list of groceries. Yeah. What's up, Oscar? Welcome in. Is that difference between reassign and immutability? No, I mean it's a different topic. It's a different topic, and technically, like right now, all of this code that I've written, it's just like outside of. We're not even in React code right now, right? This is just some JavaScript with some TypeScript sprinkled on top. And in this case, we actually are mutating this variable groceries because this push changes the underlying data, and that is not immutable. If I wanted to do this immutably, then I actually would have put this into a let variable so I can reassign it. And then anytime I want to put something into the array, instead of pushing it, I would create a brand new array, which is a copy, which has a new thing on the end of it. So I will say this mutates groceries. But if we wanted something does not mutate the array, then we create a copy. So now we reassign it. We'll say groceries is itself, so all of the existing values of groceries with a brand new thing inside of it at the end, like this. And so this is immutable, an immutable update, because we create a copy and then put a new thing at the end of the array. We talk about this in the course. We talk about immutability. We talk about basically how in React everything is immutable because it makes things a lot simpler. But right now we're outside of the context of React. We're kind of just talking about JavaScript right now. So, yeah, this is it. And honestly, I mean, all of this is just to kind of demonstrate how do we modify the existing groceries here. Really, we don't want to do any of that. We just want to use it as is, like inside of our React app. So we're going to go back to this, but these are some good rabbit holes to get down. But basically, in the course, we don't learn about this until like lesson 4. Like we're 4 days in before we even get to immutability. Day 1, we actually do talk about const versus let. There's an entire section of the lesson on how to declare variables, and we also talk about scope and stuff like that. That's a thing for sure. 2015 was rough. Var equals the old, let equals the new. Yeah, you could think about it like that, but essentially once const and let got introduced, they are better ways to express variables, and they're more predictable. They basically do what we wanted to do to begin with, whereas var has some things about it that we don't necessarily expect what happened when we first look at it, unless we really understand how it works. So now let and const work the same way as we would expect them to. They're more predictable than var. Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, Fireball Monkey, is like other programming languages would freeze the internal thing, but in JavaScript we don't. We basically just say we're indicating intent, that this variable will not be reassigned, but this does not indicate the intent that it cannot be changed. Yeah. When's a good time to use proxies? Whenever you need them. That's a bit too advanced for what we're talking about here, but things like solid.js and Vue and like MobX, they actually use proxies under the hood to manage state updates to keep track of when things change. But a good time to use proxies is if you want to know when something changes. You want to be alerted when it changes, and you want to intercept that. Yeah, no, of course system win. We're just starting. We're just starting. You know, it's really hard to teach an audience of people with such varying degrees of background, right? Because some of you know a lot. Some of you don't know a lot. And some of you have no idea who I am and you just kind of showed up. But I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best to kind of get through this. But we haven't even made it into React yet. I've basically just been talking about data and const and let and immutability. What we're going to do, the plan is we're going to build an app that lets people dynamically add new things to this list, right? We don't want to hard code it. Of course we don't. So we're getting there, system win. We're just not there yet. Whatever super peer supports is how you can pay for the course. Like, actually, I haven't even looked into that. I thought it might only be credit card. I don't know. I don't know for sure. If you need another payment method, DM me, because we could work something out. Like I could generate you could pay me with whatever way works for you, and then I could generate a code you can use to unlock the course. But yeah, let me know. The thing I don't like about JS is how thing is not proper immutable supported in the standard library. Yeah, I guess it depends. I think that's one of the tricky things about JavaScript is it's trying to be a lot of things all at once, because you can do functional programming things. You can also do object-oriented programming things, but there are aspects of functional programming that are not necessarily built into JavaScript itself. So you technically need to reach for another library, or you could use like object.freeze, but most of the time people will reach for another library when they're trying to do like really functional stuff in there. Yeah. Yeah, probably another maybe next week if you keep an eye on the stream schedule. I think next Monday I'm going to do like a very general code Q&A. You can literally ask anything, and that might be a good time to do it. Is it possible to lock an array or object from adding or removing entries? It is. Isn't it fun how we just go down all these little rabbit holes? But yeah, you can. There's this thing called freeze in JavaScript. Object freeze. And that literally prevents any sort of mutation of happening to it. So you can actually say object.freeze, you pass it in, and now anytime you try to reassign something, JavaScript literally throws an error. You can also pass an array into this, I believe. I don't think there's an array freeze. I think you just use object freeze because arrays are technically objects. But yeah, you can freeze it and then you can't add or remove it. Yeah, show spread. Well, yeah, and I kind of just showed that right here, but we need to keep moving, everybody. We need to keep moving. Yeah, it's just pure React in what I was teaching, because I am of the opinion that you really need to have a good grasp on React and also build tools and JSX and TypeScript before jumping into something like Next.js, especially if you're new to all of this. So yeah, if you look in the frequently asked questions, I talk about we don't touch that, but everything you learn is completely applicable to Next.js or Remix. Because you can't use Next.js or Remix without knowing how React works. And in my opinion, is you're going to have a better time with those two things if you have a good, solid understanding of how everything kind of like fits together. So yeah. So yeah, I think that's the other answer to this is typically you don't have to use proxies directly. Typically you're using some library that might use proxies under the hood. So like MobX is a state management tool that you can use with React that actually uses proxies under the hood. Or like Preact signals you can use with React. They use proxies under the hood. The Vue.js framework uses proxies under the hood. Yeah. I don't deal with much crypto, no. And I don't think you can't pay for the course with crypto. Stripe with Supabase sometime? Possibly. I think I definitely want to do a tutorial on some backend as a service. So like Firebase or Supabase, probably Supabase, because this course is completely front end. We just teach you how to build apps. And so one of the projects, the project that you will build needs to use an existing API, because we don't talk about how to build a backend or how to make your own API. But if you were to use something like Supabase, you could. So I would consider doing a course on that, just because it makes it more approachable for beginners to start to do full stack things. The course is $35 USD. There it is. Minimum donation. You can give more if you want to. All right, let's write some React code. So we talked a bunch of stuff. Basically, I have this list. I want to show it on the page. How do we do that with React? Well, first, I need curly braces. And so what you're looking at here is actually TSX, TypeScript with XML, or JSX, which is JavaScript with XML extensions. And essentially, we can have what looks like HTML code inside of our JavaScript code. So you can see up here, this is just plain old JavaScript or TypeScript. We're just defining an array. But then down here, we have a bunch of HTML elements. So this is TSX, which is a dev tool, a dev experience we can use to have an easier time writing React components. And there are some caveats, just like Oscar is kind of pointing out. Because we're inside of JavaScript, we can't use reserved words. And in JavaScript, a class is a reserved word, right? You could have a class animal that has like a constructor like this. This is JavaScript, right? So if I were to try to put class right here, it'd be like, yo, what is that? You're trying to make a class in the middle of an element here. So that's why we have some special replacements for some of the attributes in TSX. But okay, inside of these curly braces means I can have an expression. And what I want to do is I want to create an element for every value in this list. I want to create, let's say we just do like a list item. So maybe the parent here is an unordered list. And then I want to show a list item for every object in this array of groceries. There's a lot of ways to do it. In React, you're typically going to use map. Map is a function that's built into arrays that will return a new array of the same length as the input array with some value. So basically, I'm going to take this array of objects and turn it into an array of TSX elements. So we're going to map over it. That's going to give us each grocery item. And then I'm going to render out a nice little list item that has the item name inside of it. And so there's a couple of things happening here. So this arrow function is ES 2015. It's a more modern way of writing functions. You see this a lot in React. And then down here, I have another expression because I want to show the name inside of that list element. One of the things we need to do in React is specify a key because behind the scenes, the way this update mechanism is working, it needs to be able to keep track of those. And so we use their unique IDs so that React can keep track of them. Yeah, and so a for each wouldn't work because it doesn't do a return. So I don't cover like how to use map in the course. I'm expecting you to kind of already know that, but there are a bunch of good resources out there on that. I do have a video on my channel that talks about map, what it is, how to use it. I actually have a whole series on higher order functions. This is just like a really quick video from 5 years ago. Time flies on what is map, and then I also have some exercise for you. So if you're completely new to map and like it scares you, check out this video. Also, click the link in the description. There's actually a Git repo with a bunch of exercises. So, is it here? Yeah. So in this file, I have a bunch of example arrays, and then I have a prompt for some way to use map to iterate over that array to create a new array. In the video that I link here, I also show how to solve these, but you can practice by trying to do these exercises without watching the video. But that's map. Map returns a new list of elements. The other thing here is we have an arrow function, which is new in ES 2015. Again, that was 8 years ago, but this is a different way of defining functions, and it actually has an implicit return. Another way that you could write this without the implicit return is with an explicit return. But in order to do that, we have to change these parentheses to be curly braces. But now TypeScript is yelling at us because it's like, hey, I don't know how to render an array of void. Void array is not assignable to type React node, and that's because we need the return keyword. We need to return a list item from this function, which gives us an array of list items. And this is like functionally equivalent to this one up here, but you're going to probably see this one a lot more, this one up here, because it just has the implicit return. It's like slightly less code because we don't have to put the return keyword, but there we go. And now it iterates over the list. We should see every item in the list now. Let's see. There it is. We got apples and bananas. Yeah. No need to wrap it with quotes at all. What do you mean by that? Yeah, my birthday is May 21st. 3 weeks from now. Yeah, I think honestly we could probably stop referring to it as new, but it really, the reason that I do is because there's like context around it, right? Because before the year 2015, JavaScript was very, like the language ECMAScript was very stagnant. It was not changing very often. And then all of these features were introduced in ES 2015, and it kind of like changed everything. Like it changed even who decides to use the language, because it's more modern features, people that typically might focus on other programming languages or other environments are more inclined to use something like JavaScript or TypeScript. So that's a thing. Oh, like return. Yeah, no quotes. No quotes. And that's because that's the way JSX works is we basically can just specify the element right there, and then we get the thing that ultimately becomes the virtual DOM tree. We're not even going to talk about how React works, but ultimately what's really happening here is I'm actually doing react.create element, and then I specify I actually want a list item, and then we don't have any props, and then inside of that is the item name. I guess the prop here would be key, and key is item.id. So yeah, and then we'll import the React. So honestly, I guess I can show this too. This is shorthand for this, and I don't want to have to do react.create element everywhere, but if I do that, this actually should still work. Yeah, you can see we still get that list of items. But basically, when this code gets turned into code that can work in the web browser, we write the code that looks like this, and then it gets turned into code that looks like this. But anytime you see in JSX, that's basically just a shorthand for this react.create element thing. Okay, we have a list of items. Great, great. Now we want to add something to the list. Let's talk about that. Yeah. I thought maybe inside the curly braces there were different rules. No, and I think that's the thing, America 2050. It's like every time you see JSX, you're like, I hate it. But you're learning. You are learning though, because anytime you have these curly braces, any valid JavaScript expression can go inside of those curly braces. So like I could have something right here. So like today is, and then I could do a new date, to date string like this. And so we're inside the curly braces, so it's a valid JavaScript expression. In this case, inside the curly braces, we now have a valid JavaScript expression, which is a map over an array. But if I do this, it should tell me today's date. Why don't I use the index of the map as the key? Because the list is going to start changing. So we're going to make this app so that I could remove the first element in the list. And then at that point, this one becomes the first element. So now its key is the key of the previous one that got removed. So you want your keys to be, there's a specific word for it. Predictable? Consistent. You want consistent keys, because if you were to, unique and consistent, because if you were to use the index, so this would be key 0 and then key 1. And then if you were to remove apples, now this goes from being key 1 to key 0. And you don't want that because, I mean, technically the app would still work, but React is going to have to work harder. And honestly, it might break in some scenarios, but React is going to have to work harder to make sure that these things are rendered correctly. So you want consistent keys. I do believe they talk about that in the official React docs. Keys. Where to get your keys? Locally generated. Keys must be unique among siblings. Great. And then keys must not change or that defeats their purpose. So that's basically the point I'm illustrating here is if we remove apples, now the keys change. So that's why we don't want to use the index. Do I use TypeScript to type the data and Tailwind? So typically there's the only place that TypeScript and Tailwind come together are like in the Tailwind configuration. Other than that, it's all just like CSS class names or like CSS rules. Here, we technically could type the data, but right now I'm kind of just using inferred types. So I specify this array, and then TypeScript has inferred that each of those things has all of these properties of these types. And so that's why I'm getting type completion down here is I'm just using the inferred type. Now, technically what I could do is I could define the type first, specify this is going to be an array of that type, and then specify it. But that's really the only place where TypeScript would come in play here. You wouldn't really use TypeScript in conjunction with Tailwind that I can think of. I don't know if anybody in the chat can come up with an example. What happens when we put TSX inside curly braces? It'll probably work. I mean, you can see right here that this li is technically nested inside the curly braces. I think at that point, it just becomes like redundant. You actually don't need those curly braces. So it's still a valid syntax because, again, at the end of the day, this JSX is going to get turned into react.createElement. And that is just a JavaScript expression, right? Like this. But if I do this, then I have to, I guess I can leave that there. So it's okay to put JSX inside of the curly braces because at the end of the day, they just get turned into a JavaScript expression. But at that point, it's kind of redundant because you can have JSX at the top level without being wrapped in curly braces. But the reason that we have the curly braces here is we're basically escaping out of defining the elements, and now we want to start doing JavaScript specific things. So that's why you see the curly braces nested inside of the elements here, if that makes sense. Does it make sense? I don't know. We have a list of items though, so there we go. Got a list of items. Now we want to be able to modify it. I think before we do that, let's talk about components though, because one of the aspects that React gives you is the ability to break your UI down into components. So right now we just have a single component. Basically, our entire app is defined in this app component. But what if I wanted to extract this piece out into its own component, and we can call it like grocery list? Huh? Something like this. Wouldn't that be really nice? You can do that. So here's what we'll do. In here, we'll create a folder. We'll call it components. And then inside of there, I'll create a file called grocery list. And basically, we can now just define a new function that returns some JSX, and that's our component. So we'll export it. Define a function grocery list. And then just return that list here. And we're kind of good to go. At this point, you'll notice, though, we're missing one thing. We are missing that list of groceries. So we need to somehow get that list of groceries into this grocery list like this. Wouldn't it be nice? It's nice, yeah. So now, instead of having like a big, long, messy function, we can define it elsewhere and then use it here. And so one thing I need to do is I need to import that component. And so this is just ES 2015 modules. It lets us specify our JavaScript in separate files, and then we can reference each other. So in this case, I'm bringing in this function over here in the app, and then I can use it. So that's fine, but at this point, we're going to get an error that the grocery list doesn't have access to groceries. We need some way of passing in that list of groceries right here. And Pyramid, thank you for the resub. You are very kind. Yeah. Let's get the data in there. So the way we do it on this side, so this is the app. The app is the one that has the groceries. We want to pass that down. So that becomes a prop or a property. So let's say I have a property called groceries. And then I want to specify that as the list of groceries, like this. Now, TypeScript starts to complain because it's like, hey, this function did not say that it was going to accept a property called groceries. The type of this function doesn't accept that. So what we need to do is now we need to update grocery list to say, yes, we accept a list of groceries. So one thing we could do is just this. And now we are accepting an object, and then if you really want to see this, basically we get an object called props, and props in turn could have something like groceries on it like this. So like that would work. But typically what we do is we destructure it. We take the property off of the props that we need, and then we use it inside of here. But now you can see TypeScript is complaining as well, because it's like, hey, I don't know what this groceries thing is. Right now it says it implicitly has the any type, and the item also has the any type. And so what we can do with TypeScript is we can tell it, hey, groceries is going to be a list of objects, and each one of those objects is going to have these properties. And so this is the point where I'll actually define this type separately, because now we can start to share that type throughout our app. So basically, the type will be used right here to define the list, and then the type will also be used over here to say this is what we expect groceries to be. So let's actually define this type. And we'll put it in a different folder. Let's actually create a folder called types, create a file called grocery item.ts. What's up, Limotes? Welcome in. And we will export a grocery item interface. Well, we'll define it first, and then we'll export it. What's up, Alco? Welcome in as well. So basically, I've got this object. I want to describe it with TypeScript, so that way I can use that description throughout my app. And the way that we describe it is with an interface. You can also use a type. We're going to use an interface here. So I'm going to define a grocery item interface. And then I describe all of these properties. And honestly, if you want to see what I'm going to describe, you can actually just hover over it because and actually I'll just do this. I'll just copy it because the inside of the editor, it's actually inferring what that type is. But now I'm going to explicitly define that type. And then I don't even have to do any work. But this is it. So I've now defined an interface that says this object will have an ID, which is a number, purchase, which is a Boolean, name, which is a string, and quantity, which is a number. So I can define that interface here, and then I can use it everywhere else to make sure that the data we're getting, well, not make sure, to basically let other developers know that the data we're passing in or what we're expecting will look like this shape. Oh yeah, I didn't know that was today. Happy Workers' Day. And that's unfortunate, Limotes. You're not at the beach anymore, but thank you for being here. Okay, so we have this interface, and an interface is a description of an object, and we want to use that over here on the grocery list because we want to say, hey, groceries is an array of things that are going to look like this. So from this file, we're going to export it, and then we can bring it in and we can actually use that type. So we have this type. We want to use it on the grocery list. Let's actually import it in. So we'll import grocery item from our type. And then we want to use it. So the other thing that you'll do for pretty much every component that you define with React and TypeScript is you describe the props of the element. So I'm actually going to create an interface inside of here, and I'm going to call this grocery list props. And so this describes the object props like this, and then I can specify what it's going to have. And in this case, I want it to have groceries. So I'm going to put that here, but then now I can give it the type. And so groceries is a grocery item array. And so this is how we say an array type. And so I've defined an object which has a property called groceries, and then groceries is an array of grocery item. But now I can use this interface right here, and I can say, hey, you see that thing that I just destructured? That's actually this type that I just defined here. So now it knows what groceries is. It knows that it's a grocery item array. And then now TypeScript is happy down here because it knows, okay, well, this is an array has map, great. And then each item in there is going to be a grocery item. So now I can tell you that it's a grocery item. And here I know that it has an ID property and it has a name property. So we've now used TypeScript to make our code a little bit nicer, especially for other developers too, because if someone else comes along to this code, like if we didn't have this type defined here or this type defined here, how would they know what this is, right? How would they know that it's a list? How would they know that every list item has an ID and a name? So that's basically what TypeScript gives us, is a way to communicate with other developers and ourselves later on. I'll come back to this code in like a week, and I won't remember what that was. So basically, we don't have to memorize what the props are. We can literally write the code that tells us what those things are. Interface or type, which is better? Yeah, in this case, it doesn't matter. In this case, we are just describing an object, so you could actually use a type as well. So you could say type grocery item equals that. I think we have to do it on a separate line though. So here we would define the type and then export it like this. For this specific use case, type and interface both work exactly the same. I'm not even going to get into why you would use one over the other. Just use what works and be consistent. Some people like only use type everywhere that they can. They try not to use interface at all. I come from an object-oriented background. Like I've done C#, I've done Java. And in those languages, we use interfaces to describe things. So I'm pretty used to that. So I use interface a lot. Yeah. Working with types in a large React applications is a headache. The thing is, if you don't have the types, I feel like it's definitely worse than if you do have the types. Yeah, and I guess the interesting thing about like type versus interface is at the end of the day, all of the types in the interfaces just get removed. So the code that we write, basically types and interfaces just get thrown away because it gets turned into JavaScript, which doesn't have types or interfaces. So I think the argument is moot because they all just go away. So use whatever works for you. Andreas is saying, what's up, Andreas? Welcome in. They are saying, with types, we also have IntelliSense or autocompletion in the editor and know which properties don't exist on an object. Yeah, and I think I haven't demonstrated that here, but now that I've said groceries is a list of grocery item, if I try to do something silly like that, TypeScript yells at us because it's like, hey, you told me item was only going to have ID, name, quantity, and purchased. But now you're trying to access some other thing, and that's not actually there. So TypeScript is also making sure that we only use the things that actually exist. Can I use a generic instead of destructuring the value? In this case, this is just a plain old function, right? So notice that I don't have any other typing on this function. I think a way that you could define this, well, not I think, a way that you can define this is if you use a arrow function, you can use a generic. And Denif, thank you for the prime. Welcome in. Appreciate you. Yeah, definitely check out all of Matt Pocock's stuff if you're interested in diving deeper into TypeScript. But yeah, if we wanted to use generics, I think React does have a type. So we could say grocery list is of type React dot function component, like this. And then we could specify the component like this. But this one actually is generic, and we'd have to import React here too. Like this. And then now I could specify this right here. And then if I want to specify the type, I can pass in the props like that. And now everything else would mostly be the same. And then we also would need to export it. I think I can do that all in one line too, though. Yeah, but then you can't do export default of a const. So you technically would define export default on the next line here. Like this. There we go. So now this and this are functionally equivalent. I prefer this because not only did we have to define it separately and then export it separately, now it also introduces like this generic syntax. That's a thing. What do you have multiple props with different types? You'd specify them over here. So if we also had something like, I don't know, like shopping cart. I don't know why maybe it needs to push it into the shopping cart or something like that. So we could just add those here. So any other prop that gets passed in, we would add it to this interface. And then inside of here, we could also destructure it. So at that point, I could also destructure a shopping cart like that. So yeah, you just basically update the types on it with as many props as you want. Yeah. So yeah, I guess the shorter way is just FC, react.fc. Yeah, this one. It's a shorthand. Do I map through ID and the... Does map only loop through ID and name properties? So map gives us the entire object. So item is the entire grocery item, which has all of these properties: ID, purchase, name, and quantity. And so inside of here, I can use whichever ones I want. In this case, I'm using the ID, I'm using the name. But if I wanted to like show a check mark if item.purchase was true, I could do that too. Basically, I have access to all of the properties of item. Oh, okay. I need to make this valid really quick. It wouldn't be valid to have it after because return can only have a single element. Yeah, there we go. So you get access to everything because you have the whole object. But in this case, I'm only using ID and named. In a little bit, I'll show how we could use those other properties too. Yeah. Do we need to do a functional component all the time when we pass props to a component? You can also do class components, but in my course, we only show functional components. And in the large React apps that I've worked on, so whenever functional components came out, I was working at a consultancy, a new React app came along, we built the entire thing with functional components. There were 0 class components in it. These days, you'll probably see class components in maybe like older code bases or in some scenarios where a functional component might not work, but in our cases, we just use functional components for everything. And the thing is, like, if you're combining React with TypeScript and you want to access those props and you want to do it properly without any like type errors, then you do have to do this typing of everything. So yeah, you could do this. I don't prefer doing it that way. I like doing it the way that I showed you, because it kind of all, like, it all works together, and also you don't have to worry about like the generic syntax. So it's just a plain old function with some props that get passed in. Yeah, see you later, Oscar. Thanks for being here. A large discussion on why React.fc is discouraged. Fascinating. Provides next to no benefits. Yeah, I think I guess technically you could have, yeah, but this syntax is even weirder to me, because like technically you don't even need, okay, let's actually show this too, because like technically you don't even need the FC. Like you technically, I think if you really wanted to, you could put that on the right-hand side of the equal sign like this. What's the syntax? No, but then would you also have to specify it here? I don't know. See, even the syntax even confuses me. So I don't know. You could probably figure it out. But that's fascinating. Definitely check out that to see like why you should or shouldn't use that. Yeah. What's up? I play. Yeah, React is it's a thing. But we do our best. I don't actually know if class components are slower. They're just not the functional way of doing things. I don't think they're slower. Maybe in some scenarios. Yeah, so you could basically do everything with just functional components and hooks. There might be something you can't do with functional components, which is why I say maybe some like, and honestly, there might be things that are better expressed with a class component than a functional component. But like I said, I've built entire production-ready React apps that do not use a single class component. So it's possible. It's possible to build an app that way. All right, what are we doing? We got our component. We define the types. The other thing is now over here. So quick recap. We extracted that to a separate component. Now we can pass the data down. We got caught up in all the ways to define the types and everything else, but we're passing that data down and it's typed. You'll notice that I actually don't even have to specify the type over here. I can pass it down and TypeScript is happy. It's because TypeScript has structural typing, also known as duck typing. So even though I didn't say this was grocery item, TypeScript is nice enough to say, oh, well, they match, they overlap, so I'm not going to complain. Like, this has the same properties as is defined for grocery item. So TypeScript lets us pass that down just fine. But we could be explicit about it. We could also say that this variable is a grocery item list like this, and now we'll actually get type completion when we're defining the array. Because when I'm defining the array, if I also pass in an object like this, you see this little red squiggly, and it's basically telling me, hey, you're missing ID, purchase, name, quantity. What if I have two types with the same properties? What would happen then? They still overlap. Yeah, I mean, and that actually, I mean, check this out. So I could actually, let's not import that type. Let's define another interface that looks exactly the same, but just has a different name. TypeScript is smart enough to just know that, yeah, they overlap. And this is known as duck typing because there's the phrase like, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, then it is a duck. So thank you, CF Steen. Thank you for the format. So in this case, if it walks like a grocery item and it acts like a grocery item, then it is a grocery item. So we're going to call this interface something else. And so now you can see I have a list of something else. But down below, TypeScript is still happy because it's like, yeah, groceries is a list of something else, but technically that overlaps in this case is the exact same as the type of grocery item array. Yeah, duck typing. So yeah, this is actually a really nice feature because like in other statically typed languages, typically you have to like cast things or you have to make sure you're using the exact type. So in this scenario, as long as the structure matches, TypeScript is happy enough to like not complain about it. Oh, you can do back. Oh yeah, because it's Markdown. I forgot about that. Yeah, use Markdown. Quacks like a duck, walks like a duck. It's a Minecraft chicken. Yeah. It's a really good duck impersonator. Class is slower because the bundle generated is bigger. I guess I could see that. But that's just a slower load time on initial page load. That's not like slower at rendering, I guess. Right? Oh, I missed this. A property not defined in the interface, you said you can't access it. Is TypeScript loose? Does TypeScript lose the property? It doesn't. No. So, I mean, I guess I haven't showed this, but if I did something like this, TypeScript yells at us. But the thing about TypeScript is that at build time, it just goes away. So at build time, all of these type annotations get completely removed, like literally just like deleted from the file. And because at the end of the day, it has to just be JavaScript. I'm not gonna dive into like how TypeScript works in the whole process there, but that's one thing to keep in mind. And so technically it still is just JavaScript, and whatever you could do in JavaScript, you could still do here. Now, you could be much more strict about it. You could update your TS config to not let you do these things. But at the end of the day, it is just JavaScript. You're just writing JavaScript code here. I'm going to publish a preview of the course next week on YouTube. So during the course, we had this lesson, Intro to TypeScript, and I'm actually going to publish this section for free that talks about like what TypeScript is, how it's related to JavaScript, and then what actually happens in order to be able to like run our code. So TS config is the TypeScript configuration that tells the TypeScript compiler what it should do with our code when it gets turned into JavaScript, and then like an ESLint config is for our linter, for ESLint, that describes the rules for how we check for errors in our code. Wait, since when does this give us an ESLint file? Is this new? Is this new? I don't remember. Honestly, in the course when I was generating React apps, did it give us an ESLint file? I don't think it did. Fascinating. Let's look at the release notes for or not even the release notes. We could actually look at the Vite templates. Template React TypeScript. Last week. No, it has an ESLint. Oh, no. It got added 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I got it. Okay, so fascinating. Vite updated their template to add, look at this, 2 weeks ago, add ESLint to the React templates. I feel like there must have been some point during the course where our React apps started getting ESLint, because I actually didn't show ESLint, because a lot of times as a React beginner, you see, like, if you're combining ESLint errors and TypeScript errors, it gets really overwhelming. So I kind of recommend, if you're a beginner, don't use ESLint just yet, because TypeScript is already going to help you with a lot of things. And then if you see the linter errors, you don't know if you should ignore them or how they should compare to like TypeScript errors. But yeah, fascinating. Got added 2 weeks ago. Okay, let's keep moving. So what were we even talking about? Yeah. So we define this separate type. It still works. That's duck typing. All right. What we actually want, though, is this to be a grocery item list. And now we want the ability to add new groceries to the list. So let's do that. And we'll actually start off with a component. So we're going to create a component called the grocery item form. And this form is going to let us add new grocery items to the list. So we're going to define the grocery item form component. And this for now is just going to return a form. And well, for now, we'll make it simple. I mean, I've been live for an hour and a half and we haven't even written that much code. But you see the level of detail that I actually dive into on a lot of these things, because I think especially for a beginner, like you could watch somebody code this and you could just copy the code exactly, but you're not going to learn what's actually happening or get descriptions of what's actually happening here. So let's say we have an input here. And then we'll also have a label, and this will say item name, the how and the why. Exactly. This is going to be for grocery item. And again, this is another situation where we're in TSX, and it's like, hey, are you trying to make a for loop right there? No, we want the HTML attribute, so we need to use HTML4. I'll give this an ID of grocery item, and this is really just a user experience thing. Like if the ID and the HTML4 match up, when you click on the label, it focuses the input. That's the main reason that we're doing that. Cool. So simple little form, label input. We'll also add a button to add item to the list. We need to import that form over here. So in VS Code, once you start working with TypeScript and everything else, as long as things are defined and exported, in this case, we're exporting it, it has the name grocery item form. So over here, if I do command period or control period, if you're on Windows, it automatically does. It's like, oh, I found that. Do you want to import that? Yes, I do. And then it auto adds that import to the list right there. Yeah, I think that's the funny thing, right? So if you look at Preact, they let you use for. But in TSX or JSX, we can't. We have to say HTML4. You get used to it. I think it's, yeah, I think about, there's a lot of things that like, you think, well, why didn't they just do that? I don't know. Maybe there's a good reason for it. Maybe there's not a good reason for it. But okay, we have the form, we imported it. We should now see a form right above the list. We do. And let's make sure we're not getting any other errors. Good to go. What's up, Harsh? Welcome in. So now what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to say, let's say I want to add like dog snacks to the list. And then I click add item. That should add it to the list, and it shouldn't refresh the page. So let's get that going. And one of the first things we'll do is we'll tap into the form submitted event. So in React, if you want to tap into a DOM event on any element, you can say on, and then specify the DOM event that you want to tap into. The DOM event that I want to tap into is submit. And then I can specify a little function right here that's going to get called when the form is submitted. So here I can prevent the default action. So I can just say event.prevent default. That prevents the page from refreshing and makes it so that we can actually handle the form submission here with JavaScript. And then for now, I'm just going to log out form was submitted. And so now when I type and submit the form, we see form was submitted. So this function is getting called whenever this button is getting pressed, which is pretty cool. But now I also want to keep track of what is in this input box. And this is where state comes into play. So state is essentially anything in your UI that is changing over time. And in this case, we can represent like the value displayed in the form as like state of our app. In a second, we're also going to represent this list as state, because once we get this form working, that's going to change, right? We're going to, that is data associated with the app that will change over time. We'll add new items to the list. We will remove some of them. We'll mark some of them as purchased. We'll potentially change the quantity, all of that stuff. I think the other thing we need is an input and a label for quantity. So I'll have a label how many do I need, which is quantity. And I think I'm going to rename this just to name. So these are a bit more consistent. And I'm going to give them a name attribute. So name is name, which is confusing, but this name is quantity. Quantity, like that. And then the input here, I can give a type of number. So that way we get a nice little up-down arrow like this. Cool. Yeah, you can nest the label inside. You nest the input inside of the label, and then actually you don't need the HTML4 anymore. It just works. Like they're automatically linked together. That works too. For is a reserved keyword, yeah, because and that's kind of what we mentioned. So for is like a for loop, like yeah, a for loop. So it's a reserved word, which is why we can't use the for right here. Yeah. What's up, Natoxi? Welcome in. All right, we have some state. Do I default to controlling the form inputs? In this case, we're just teaching the basics of state in React, so we're gonna control the form inputs. There are other ways to handle form state. They typically you typically bring in another library for that, but in our case, we're gonna control the form inputs, and I'll show you a thing right here. Yeah, what's up, Scared Gohan? So I just launched a course. It's called React Roots. If you go to reactroots.com, you can learn more about it. So today, I am just building a quick React app and answering any questions in the chat so you can get an idea of how I teach. And I also keep referring back to the course to talk about what I cover in the course. So right now, we are building a grocery list. And so far, we can see a list of groceries. And then right now we're working on a form to add a new grocery item. That's what we're doing right now. So we need some state. And basically I need state to keep track of the name and the quantity. And for that, I'm going to use a hook from React called useState. So here I'm going to have the name, and then we also get a function called setName. And useState gets imported from React. And we can give it an initial value. So the name here is going to be an empty string. And then the quantity, and then set quantity is going to start off as we'll default to one. I think I'll add some other things on the input here, like the min value can be 1, and I think the step defaults to 1. So that way you can't add 0 of an item. It always starts at 1. I don't have any suggestions for game development channels. Yeah. There's a lot of niceties in Vue and also in Svelte, things that aren't as like manual or like weird as they are in React, but that's just the nature of things. Okay, so I have these state variables, but now I basically want to combine those state variables with what's happening in the UI. So what I need is on this name input, whenever the value of the input changes, I need to update this underlying state variable. So like right here, I can tap into on change, and that's going to give me the event. I can pass in a little function, and right here I can call setName with event.currentTarget.value. So that's going to be the value that was typed into the input. And every time this input changes, we are updating this underlying state variable. And to kind of see it in action, let's just throw like a little H1 right here so you can see it. The name is, and then we can pass in the name like right here. And so every key press into this input is updating this state variable, and this whole thing is rerunning, and then we're going to show the actual state variable right here. So now if I start typing, you can see as I type, this thing down here is updating, and that's because we're updating the underlying state variable, and then over here we're showing the latest value of that state variable. Yeah, so there's no built-in binding. And I actually love that you're learning React right now, America 2050. You complain about React every time. But yeah, you're learning. React does not have any built-in binding. We have to do it manually. Now, like I said, there are libraries that handle a lot of this stuff for us, so we don't have to do it manually. But in this case, built-in, we kind of have to do it manually. The other thing we should do is bind the value to this input. So right here, I should say the value should be name. So as I update the name, the value specified in the UI is the name as well. I'm okay with that, America 2050. And so I now need to do the same thing with quantity, right? So over here for quantity, I need an on change. We're gonna grab this change event listener, and then when it changes, we want to set the quantity We'll do event.target.value as number. That's probably a new one. Some people might have just learned that. But this is just this is like a vanilla DOM right here. There is a value as built into DOM elements, so it actually parses them under the hood. So instead of just getting a string, that auto parses whatever they typed in as a number. And then we'll bind the value as well. So right here, I can say value is quantity. And now behind the scenes, we're keeping track of both name and quantity. So I want some dog snacks. How many do I want? 5. And then when I click this button, we need to add it to the form. It only works for input type number. Cool. Well, this is input type number. What's the difference between current target and target? I don't know if this code would actually work with target. Let's see if it'll work with target. The app is taking shape. It's happening. Yeah, it means document object model, exactly. I don't know. I can't answer that. I think that, so the thing about these events though is this is a synthetic event. A synthetic event, which means that like it's like a wrapper or like a recreation of an actual DOM event. And when we're writing code here, we're actually dealing with the virtual DOM. So I think there's a scenario where target is like out of date, but current target is sure to be the latest one. I think that's the way to go here. But no, both target and current target would be where the event got fired because we're attaching it to the input. So the value is actually the state by setting value equal. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. When you need the current element, I mean, let's see though. Current target versus target. Element target is the element that triggered the event. Current target is the element the event listener is attached to. So for our specific use case, target and current target are the exact same thing because we're attaching the event listener to the input, and it's being fired on that input. I always just default to current target because I guess for whatever reason, if you put an event listener, it wouldn't be for on change. It would be some other DOM event. If you put it on like a parent element, there's some other scenarios. I always just default to current target. Okay, now that state is being updated behind the scenes, and now we actually want to reference it. So yeah, click events if you want to like look at like a nested element or something like that. Sure, I get it. I appreciate that, Finder the Ice Wing. So when the form is submitted, we can access these state variables. So let's actually just log it out. So right here, I'm going to add a name and quantity. So the user is typing in the UI, etc. And then finally, when they're done, they click add item, and we now have access to that state that's in the UI, right? We get the name, we get the quantity, and then we can do something with it. So what I want to do, now that we have the thing that we want to add to the list, I want to add it to the list. But how am I going to add it to the list? So it's like send item to the list. How am I going to do that? Because if you look right now in our app component, the form is here, but the list of groceries is like here. So like technically we could pass down the list, right? We could pass the list down here. And actually we wouldn't even pass down the list. We wouldn't have to pass down some setter function to be able to update it. So this is the problem that I need to solve right now is how can this component, which is here, let the app know that the data has changed so that the list has the latest value and can render it. That's what we're going to solve next. Yeah, and I'll mention for the course, like, I covered just enough TypeScript to be productive with React and like basic JavaScript. We don't dive into like any complexities of TypeScript. Basically, just everything we do, we use TypeScript to do it, and we talk about TypeScript in the context of what we're doing. It's not like a deep dive. It's not like some of the courses that just teach you a bunch of stuff about TypeScript, like potentially out of context. So we just do TypeScript directly with our React code. This is the break timer that I use. I think honestly it just kicked in because I paused it earlier. Or maybe no, it's been kicking in. Never mind, it's been kicking in since we started. I have it set up for a micro break every 10 minutes, so it just pops up for 10 seconds. It reminds me to take my hands off the keyboard. Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to solve this problem. You could use the context API. But what we're gonna do is first we actually need to represent this as a state variable, right? Because right now it's just an array, and then we're passing that array down here. We need to turn this into a state variable that can then be updated using React's state mechanism. So let's do that. And we'll need to specify it right here. So what I'm going to need is a list of groceries. And then I can specify that list of groceries. Now, use state is a generic TypeScript function because we can pass in what the state should be. So first of all, I need to update my React import so that it also imports use state, which comes from React. But then right here, I can tell it the type. So let's say, for instance, I didn't specify quantity here. React isn't yelling at me right now because it's just inferring the type from what I passed in. But if I tell it, hey, this is going to be a list of grocery item, now TypeScript complains because TypeScript is like, hey, you said it's going to be a list of grocery item, but this one is missing quantity. And so then that fixes the error there. So first thing we've done is we've now have the state inside of our React app, so that way we can use it in our components to like update it and stuff like that. And so one thing I could do, and so this setter function is the one that's going to let us put new things into this list. I could pass the setter function down directly, but it actually would be nice if I handled that on the outside and just pass in the function that does it accordingly. So let's do this. Let's have a function called add item. And this will take in the item name, which is a string, and the quantity, which is a number. And this is going to be a little arrow function, which takes those two things in and then puts it into the list. And so the way that we put it into the list is we talked about this earlier. Essentially, we need to copy the list and then put a new object on the end of the list. And so set groceries, technically you can just pass in a value that you want to set, but it's a good habit to get in to pass in a function which gives you access to the previous value. So previous is going to be whatever the current state is, and then we can use that in our setter function. So right here, we can specify, I want to set groceries. It needs to be a new array. We're going to copy all of the previous groceries to the beginning of the array, and then we're going to put this new thing at the end of the array. So we can specify the name, quantity, will default purchased to false. And then we also need an ID. In this case, I'm just going to use date.now to get a unique ID here. Basically, this sets the array of groceries to be a copy of the existing array with a new object on the end of it. And so there's a lot of scenarios where your function for setting might not have the right groceries value. It might be an old value or an out-of-date value. So by doing this, you're always guaranteed to have the latest value of the list that you're then going to be updating. You'll notice we are not mutating the array, right? I'm not saying groceries.push. This is not that. And technically you could get this to work, but it's not how you write React code. Basically, so you could push. And you could also call like force update or something like that. Honestly, you could push and then you could say set groceries with what it already is. Technically this would work, but you don't want to do this. Yeah, you just don't mutate the array. Basically, it's a rule of React. You always return a copy of things because the underlying mechanism for determining should this component update or like what should be the latest value that gets displayed in the UI, all of that is based on the simple idea that nothing can be mutated. And if nothing can be mutated, that means if the reference changes, then we know it needs an update. So it's a very simple mechanism under the hood where it's basically like, okay, because you're giving me a brand new array, I know that I need to potentially update this grocery list because there's a new array. Versus mutating it, like I said, you could get it to work, but ultimately you want to work with immutable data because that's how React works under the hood. It sees a new reference, it knows that it needs to update that section of the app. Cool. So this little function takes in name and quantity and then pushes something into the end of the array. And this is actually what I'm going to pass down to the grocery item form. So I'm going to pass down add item, and now I pass that function. And then inside of the grocery item form, if it calls that function, it's going to be able to update the list, right? So now we're going to need to define some props over here. We talked about this earlier with the grocery list component. So the grocery list has props that says we're going to get a list of items. Now over here for the grocery item form, I need to define some props that say we're going to get an add item function. Yeah, mad props. So I need an interface. I'm going to call this grocery item form props. And I need to tell it that it's going to receive an add item function here, which I'll have to define in a second. I feel like they could have made a method for that, doing the spread thing for you. They could have done a lot of things, but I think what you'll notice once you dive into React is React is extremely minimal, and all of the things that you would like prefer in your developer experience, like being able to just push into an array or different things like that, there are other libraries that can handle that. So in larger React applications, you typically, like as your app grows, you don't want to have to do this everywhere. It gets really cumbersome, especially with like deeply nested updates. So there's a library called immer. What? Is their website down? /immer. Immer, German for always. But this library you can use in conjunction with React, but they give you these functions called produce, where you can pass in the previous value, write code that actually just mutates it, but technically this thing returns a copy with the updated values, and it uses internally uses structural sharing. So it's actually like a bit more performant than like doing full-on copies of things. But typically you would use a library like this so you don't have to do all this manual stuff. React just updates all the items in the list and not just adds one to the end. There's a whole process here which we haven't talked about, which is basically how React decides what to change on the page. And the virtual DOM is basically how it does that. So in a second, whenever we get a new item added to the list, what's going to happen is this render function is going to rerun, and it's going to return a new list that has one extra item on the end of it. And behind the scenes, React is going to compare the old version, or like the current version on the page, to the new virtual DOM tree that got generated. And it's going to be smart enough to see, okay, everything is the same. Oh, but we have a brand new item. So under the hood, React is just going to add a new item to the list. So React isn't just adding all of the items to the list every single time. It is only adding the things that it needs to based on what changed in the state. And I'll show you that in the DOM. You can actually see where the update happens. React isn't just wiping the whole thing out. It's smart enough to only add the thing where that it needs to add, but it does that via this virtual DOM mechanism. Yeah. What's up, Emerald? Yeah, I mean, so we have a find a pair channel in our Discord. That could work, maybe. So if you join the Discord, there's a channel called Find a Pair. You could ask if anybody wants to be like a study partner with you or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of that's all I got for you. I mean, and technically, if you want to, you could buy this course on React and TypeScript. And there's like a slow growing community of people taking the course that like help each other and stuff like that. Yeah, I haven't seen Mantine. There was a library called Immer. All right. What are we doing? We're at the point where we need to define the props for our grocery item form, right? So we're passing down @item, but at this point we need to tell TypeScript what add item should be. So we need to describe this this function here in a type. And the way that we do that is with this syntax here. So what I've done is I said the props will accept an @item function. That function accepts no arguments and returns nothing, so returns void. But if I want it to match the function that I've defined out here, I need to match the function signature. So I need to say that @item is a function that takes in name, which is a string, quantity, which is a number, and then returns nothing. So this is how we define the type of a function. And now I can actually use these props right here. So right here, we can get access to @item, specify that these are the grocery item form props, and then now we can use @item right here. But you'll see TypeScript has stopped complaining because now the types match. This type matches the type of this function, and so we're good to go. But we're home free because now that we have the function, we can just call it. So at this point, when the form is submitted, I can say @item, pass in the name, which is literally name, and then quantity. Done. That's it. That's all. We now have it. So I want to add dog snacks. I want to add 5 of them. And look, I can just keep clicking. And then it's adding them to the list. Now, of course, for like a good user experience, we probably want to clear out the form. We want to reset the quantity. We want to prevent the user from submitting if the name is empty. We can add some more stuff here. First off, what we should do is in the list here, let's show the quantity because we're not actually showing the quantity right now. So in the grocery item list, what would you gain by using Immer? Less verbose code. So if you've ever used or seen Redux Toolkit, it's actually using Immer under the hood. And there's some other tools that use Immer as well. But basically, you can see the example here. So if you didn't have Immer, you would have to create a shallow copy and then replace the specific element and then update the property. So without Immer, this is the kind of code that you'd have to write. But with Immer, you can just, using this produce function, you can basically just do the mutations, but under the hood, it's actually returning a copy. So that's what you gain with Immer, is you don't have to write all of this manual copying code. It handles all of that under the hood for you. Yeah, so but it has a return type, but the return type is nothing. Because you'll notice if you look at like where I define the function, this @item function doesn't return anything. So technically this is return void. And that's how I've specified it here, is that it returns nothing. What were we doing? We want to show the quantity in the list. So let's actually show it right here. So we'll do item.quantity. So that many items are in the list. Cool. And then let's improve the user experience of this form. First of all, let's disable this button if the name is empty. So on the form, this button, we can say disabled is if name, remove the white space, and we'll say if the length is equal to 0. So if there is no name, then this button should be disabled, right? I shouldn't be able to click this unless there is a name. And then now, as I type, we're good to go. But then the other thing is after I add it to the list, I want to clear out the form. So you tell me, how can I clear out the form right here? Or like, let's say like reset the form. What do I need to do based on what I've written so far to actually clear out the values that I have there? Yeah, you look at you, America 2050. You're a bona fide React developer. Yeah, we just set it to empty. Reload the window. So yeah, set name to the empty string, and now we've reset the name box. And then I would also set the quantity to back to 1 because it potentially got changed. Yeah, you're totally right. Basically, this add item function could return true or false. If it returns false, we could show an error message that says you've already added this item to the list. Definitely, and that would be a way to do it, right? Like this could do the dirty work of making sure it doesn't already exist in the list. Returns a boolean. Over here, if you can get the return value here. If it was false, show an error, that kind of thing. Cool, yeah, so we reset the form. Good to go. The other thing we should be doing is also like validation. So I should also do something like if the name is empty, we could show an error. For now, let's just try to do. I mean, technically, we could show an alert. We'll just say something like name cannot be empty. Let's just show this, and then let's actually show the error in the UI. So if I just put a bunch of spaces here, I can't even click the button. So I guess we don't even need that alert. We're kind of like, we have like the built-in validation here where like I have to do something like this before I can add it, and then it clears it out. React prevents us from doing name equals something, right? Nope. So at the end of the day, this is just a string, and you could technically, I mean, it's a const though. It is a const, so but if you made it a let, you do this, and now you're stuck. Now you can't even type. It just says wat all the time. So yeah, React doesn't prevent you from doing this, but making it a const prevents you from doing this. Yeah, so you could do a dialogue. Yeah, I think this is probably enough for now. But really, in the real world, you would have some like more form validation. And somebody asked about it earlier, but something about Zod. I use Zod for a lot of things. This is a good scenario where you could bring in Zod. You could have a schema validator with Zod to make sure that like name and quantity are right. Like name is not empty, quantity is like minimum value of 1. And then you can also combine that with a library like React hook form. Eddie, thank you. You're very kind. Thank you for the gifts. Oh, congrats to Sequel Gortster and Finder the Icewing. Thank you, Eddie. Too kind. Yeah, Zod is awesome. Miracle says, could you make it write item x2 instead of adding a new line if the item is the same? Oh, you could. Yeah, but at that point, it's mostly just JavaScript. I like that idea, though. Let's do it. Let's do it. So basically, if you type the name of something and it's already in the list, increase the quantity instead. That's a good coding challenge. Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, welcome in, Salty McGoat. Zod is newer, and Zod was written from the ground up with TypeScript in mind. Yup has been around for a long time, and I think they added type annotations on top of it. Like, if you look at the Zod documentation, they actually do a comparison with Yup. Yeah, so Yup was implemented in Vanilla.js, and then later so Yup was rewritten for TypeScript. But there are a few things that Yup can't do that Zod can do. But I would check out this section of the Zod docs to see a comparison with a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, and then Joy does not have static type inference. So we haven't even talked about Zod yet, but one of the cool things about Zod is after you define your schema validator, you can extract a TypeScript type from it. So for example, if I can define my schema validator like this, and this line of code literally it infers a TypeScript type that I can use. And so that's the nice thing about Zod is you don't have to duplicate your work. You define the schema validator, and then you can use it, but you also get back a type that can be used and passed around. Yeah, I gotta go to the Yup docs. I mean, I haven't looked at Yup in so long because I've been using Zod so much. But that's one of the nice things about using a library like this. So if you were to use Joy, you would have to duplicate your work. So with Joy, you would define the schema validator, and you'd have to define the user type or the user interface. Type level TypeScript. Have I seen this? I have seen this. I don't have any opinions on it. I actually have no idea about it. Seems fine. I mean, I think, yeah, it's probably fine. It's pretty. It looks good. I don't know. I think if yup works for you, you're probably good. No, I think so. My course probably does not go as deep with it. Yeah. So we talk about types and values. We don't even talk about the record type. No, like my course really just covers the first part here. But I would argue that's really all you need to know to be productive. All of this other stuff is useful, like if you're writing a library and you need to define custom TypeScript types, or you're doing some really crazy stuff and you need to like get really custom with how you're defining types and generics and stuff like that. My course is how to use TypeScript as minimal as possible, right? Like I think like, and honestly, like people have talked about that before. Like the best TypeScript is no TypeScript. You just infer all of your types. You don't have to define. Yeah, inferred types are like the best because then you have like less code you need to worry about. All that good stuff. I don't know. But yeah, that's the break timer that I'm using. It's nice. Like, yeah, so that's absolutely where I use Zod as well. So like if you're getting data back from an API or you're about to send data to an API, you would use Zod. Just enough to be dangerous. Yeah, just enough to be useful, honestly, not even to be dangerous. And honestly, I feel like if you're newer to TypeScript and like this is the first thing that you do, then I think you're too dangerous. Then you're dangerous with TypeScript because I think at that point you've learned so much TypeScript and you're like, oh, I want to use this everywhere. And then you end up writing way more TypeScript than you actually need to, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, nice, Puig. Glad to hear it. Yeah, it seems fine. It seems fine, but I think it's the same thing with the type challenges repo. I think like maybe the introductory stuff is like really useful, especially if you're new to TypeScript. Yeah, like these easy stuff, probably fine. The medium, maybe even the earlier ones are fine, but this just gets so complicated, and for most TypeScript, you don't need all this extra stuff. Everything becomes a Neo when you have a golden hammer. Nice. You have a project called Golden Hammer? Yeah. Samwise is actually a bot. That's just a bot. He responded to someone's command. Yeah, if you check out my first of all, if you check out my setup, this has all of them apps that I use on my Mac. Especially like productivity apps. So those are listed out here. And then I have a section on apps that I use daily. And then also, if you check the frequently asked questions, there's probably something in there around like stuff that I use as well. Yeah, for sure, Salty McGoon. All right. What are we doing? Oh yeah, I was gonna tell you. In the real world, you'd validate the form, you'd pull in a library like Zod, and then you'd also pull in a library like React Hook Form, which makes managing forms much less cumbersome. But it can integrate with Zod. So you can see that they have this yup validator right here, but you also can bring in a Zod validator, define your schema, pass it into this use form hook, and then now it's actually going to validate the form submission against that schema. So this library, React Hook Form, is pretty slick. Okay, I think we're in a good spot. It would be fun to implement that logic that person mentioned, where like if I were to go add apples, and if I did this, instead of adding another one, we should actually increase the quantity in the list. Let's do that, because that's going to be fun. And really, we would handle all of that in the add item function. So the add item function, which is defined up here, instead of immediately updating set groceries, we can figure out, does the item already exist? And if it does, increase the quantity instead of adding a new one. So let's do that. So let's just say the existing index is going to be groceries dot find index, and we get each grocery item, and we want to find the index where the item name is equal to the name that just got passed in here. We could also do something like do it to lowercase, so it doesn't matter if you uppercase it or lowercase it when you're adding it, like this. So find the index in the array of an item that has that same name. And if that index is not -1, because it'll return -1 if it didn't find it. So if it's not -1, then update the quantity. Otherwise, add it to the list. Because so if we didn't find it, meaning index, let's do it. Let's do not negative. So if index is -1, put it in the list. If it's not -1, yeah, that's what Codex says. Invert that if. So if the index is -1, add it to the list. If it's not -1, update the quantity in the list. So updating the quantity is actually where things get a little bit tricky here, because we can't. I mean, if you were writing this in a mutable way, if you were writing this in a mutable way, the thing is, if I do a return, I guess I could put a return here, because then we're returning void. I don't like the bare return though. There's nothing wrong with a little else statement. That's all I'm saying. So okay, so if I wanted to do this in a mutable way, I could take that index and I could say, okay, groceries at that index, existing index, dot quantity, and then increment it by the quantity that got passed in. This is mutation. This is a mutable thing. And you don't want to do this. So how do we do it in a non-mutable way? Or a return void 0? Does that work? That just seems really ugly to me. I mean, I guess we could do that. I'm okay with the else statement right here. Now, if we were to get like deeply nested, I would start to consider other alternatives, but I don't know. Left. There we go. That's a link to my mouse. I got a command for everything. I've been doing this a long time. I guess I've been live streaming on Twitch for like at least like over 3 years at this point. I get a lot of the same questions over and over again. So it just helps, because when there's a lot of new people, it can get pretty overwhelming to answer the same questions over and over and over again. So, okay. So this is mutation. We don't want to do this. Now, what we need to do is return a copy of the array. So let's write it out in steps. So create a copy of the array. Every other item in the array stays the same. The item we are updating, we need to copy and change the quantity value. Are there any real world scenarios to avoid mutation? It's really just if you're working in like functional programming style things, and like the argument for immutability is things are more predictable. Like if you know that there is no mutation anywhere else in your app, there's a lot of like assumptions, like I guess you don't have to make anymore, because you know everything is immutable. So it's like a tenet of functional programming. Is there a similar library to React hook forms, but for Vue 3? I found a Vue hook forms project, but it's not maintained. The one that I remember is Vuelidate? Is that what it's called? It's got 6.6 thousand stars. You can pass in your little validations. Yeah, and then you get like a use validate. This might be it. I've only seen this. I haven't used it, but it looks pretty good. But yeah, you could mutate the item, pass the filtered items from the items. There's a lot of ways to go about it. I would say the way that I typically see it is still with a map. So we still do a map, but instead of just copying the array, like well actually we didn't even do a map here, but we do it with a map. Let me show you how to do it with a map. It's kind of like all in one go. But ultimately, if you complete these steps in some way, right? There's like 5 different ways you could solve this particular problem of updating the array to be a copy. All of the existing objects are the same. The one that we're trying to modify is different. There's a lot of ways to do it, but let me show you with a map. So we'll say set groceries. That gives us access to the previous list of groceries, and then we want to map over that. So we'll map it. That gives us each item. Okay, now, yeah, item, this, okay. what we can do, we figured out the index ahead of time, right here. So what we can do is we can say, if this index, so in a map, you also get access to the index. Magic, I mean, it's not too much magic. We can just say if the index is equal to the existing index, so this is the one that we want to replace, we return a copy. Otherwise, we return the item itself. And so this kind of solves the problem, right? So every other item in the array stays the same, which means we don't even touch the ones that are not the ones that we're looking for. But the one that is the one that we're looking for, we need to return a copy. How do we return a copy? We can also use the spread syntax, but we do it on an object instead. So I want to return a brand new object. I want to spread all of the existing properties of that item into that object, but I want to update the quantity to be the existing quantity plus the quantity that got passed in. So this is an immutable update. We've created a copy with all the existing properties, but then we overwrite the quantity to be the new quantity. So the existing quantity plus the quantity that we are updating by. So this is an immutable update because this whole map is going to return a new array. Every item in the array that didn't change stays the same. So we're not copying that one. We're just returning the same one. But the one that we want to change, then instead we return a new object, we spread it, we update the quantity property. So this is one way to do it. Honestly, this is how I would do it if this were my code base. But let's talk about the other ways to do it, because some people don't like map. Some people haven't gotten their heads around map yet. So honestly, we could even do something like this. Let's say now we pass this a function. Ultimately, this function needs to return the updated array. So we could say the copy is previous.slice, right? So create a copy of the array. And then at the end of the day, just return that copy. You could also say the copy is this, right? So these two lines of code are functionally equivalent. They create a copy of the array. So we have the copy. And now we need to modify it. And at this point, because we have a copy, we can actually we can't do this. It's gonna be a little bit thing. Do we need the index in advance? Can't we do item name equals name? Well, if you think about it, there's two scenarios, right? There's one where we put it on the end of the list, and then there's another scenario where we update the existing one. So yeah, I mean, yeah. So if you wanted to do this like in a single pass, you could definitely write the code to do that, right? Because in a single pass, you could say, if I made it to the end of the array and I didn't find the item, well, so create the copy first, iterate. If you find the item, replace that in the array with the new item. But if you make it all the way to the end of the array, push a new one into the copy. You could definitely do that. This one, it technically has more iteration because you have to first find it to see if it exists. If it doesn't exist, push. And then if it does exist, like overwrite it. Yeah, you're right. There's a couple other ways to go about it. But okay, create the copy. And then now we can say the old item is going to be copy at that existing index. Great. So we grab the copy. Then we could say the new item is a brand new object. So curly braces creates a brand new object. We could spread the old item and do this little bit right here. So this piece is the same to create the new item. And then we need to replace the old item with the new item. So we can say the copy at the existing index is equal to new item. So now we've replaced it. So this little bits of code here is pretty much the same as this map right here. The map creates a new array, replaces the one that we're trying to update with a new copy. Everything else is the same. In this case, we create a new array. We overwrite the existing one with a new object that we create. I mean, technically, you could do this as a little one-liner as well. You could do this. But like I said, if this were my React code base, this is what I would do. Or I would use an external library. So this is where Imer would really come into play because you can see this is showing us an example of like copy the array, update the one at the first index to be done true. Whereas with Imer, you have this little produce function, and then we can just modify it directly. So with Eimer, we could have literally just said array bracket existing index dot quantity equals value, and then we're done. Oh, yeah, this was wrong. This is wrong. This would have been no, old item dot quantity plus quantity. No, that was right. That was right. Yeah, so I'll talk about. So I think you're referencing this little piece right here. The main trick with this map is this thing needs to be a copy. This needs to be a brand new object. So, you could, yeah, you could, yeah, that's another way to write this one as well. You could say old item is item like this. You could write it like this, and then you could say old item dot quantity equals this, and then you could return old item like that. This is another way to do it. So like copy it, update the property, return the old item. But these 3 lines of code are doing the same thing as this, which is returning a new object, spread the properties, and override this. So this is one of the aspects of object spread. Yeah, so it has to be a copy first, but one of the aspects of object spread is this is going to copy all of the properties over, including like name, ID, quantity, all that stuff. It's going to copy that, and then anything specified after that will overwrite the stuff before it. So that's why this technically copies over the quantity property, but this will overwrite it because it's specified after that. Wow. But at this point, it should work. It should work. So now, if I try to add more apples, boom, it increases to 3 instead. So, or let's increase the quantity by like 10, add it. Now we have 13 apples. We've done it. We've done it. Is the destruct if creates a new object? Not sure what you mean by that, but ultimately the fact that I'm doing an object literal here, that's the thing that creates the object. What's up, Platt? Like a negative value? We made it so that you can't send the quantity negative. Why does it have to be a copy? It's a nested object. So it has to do with like references and the fact that the state value that is the array is a reference itself. And if we replace that with a copy, good to go. But if we need to update a nested property in that object, it also needs to be a copy. That just has to do with how immutability works and how everything else is referenced. All right. Now, we can't do a negative number. I mean, I guess we're not doing any validation. So if the user types in a negative number, oh yeah, the browser validation helps us out. It's like, hey, this has to be at least 1, because in the form, we actually what did we do? We said the minimum value was 1. Would it be possible to do an undo button? It could. We'd have to keep track of every action that happened, which is totally possible. And honestly, when we're talking about immutability, undo and redo are one of the perfect examples of where immutability makes a whole lot of sense. Because if you basically have a list of every action a user has ever performed, each new action is in the state and it's all immutable. But now that means you have like a history of everything that happened. So if you want to go back and undo or go back in time, all you have to do is replace all of the state with the thing in that list of states. So yeah. Structured clone instead of spreading. I personally, I haven't used structured clone yet. Somebody mentioned it when we were talking about immutability. This technically does it. That does a deep clone. I don't know. Oh, so it does a deep copy. Cool. So we could use structured clone here. Basically, what we could do is we could say structure clone groceries, and then just mutate it, because at that point, but the issue is we actually don't want a deep copy here. We want a combination, because there are certain items that we don't want to replace, and a structured clone would create a copy of every single one. We don't want that. In this case, we only want to create a copy of the one that got updated, because this one stays the same. This is the same reference as before, whereas structured clone would create a copy of every single one. Yeah. Is this where we use local storage? Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'll also kind of like end it there because I'm getting tired and I need to go eat dinner. But let's show that. So right now, if I refresh the page, you can see we have 13 apples and 5 bananas. If I refresh the page, it goes back to the original state. But one of the things we might want to do is if a user comes to the website, adds a bunch of grocery items to the list, we want it to be the same the next time they come back on this machine. This won't work across machines. We can use local storage. So essentially, any time we change the list, we should write it to local storage. And let's actually do this. We're going to move this list into a variable called initial items. Okay. So here, we're going to have the initial items set to that. So basically, we always default to this just to give the user some stuff. Basically, I would say this. You can take everything I showed you today, and you can get remove to work, right? So remove is just another permutation of the add item function, right? So instead of adding, which is making a copy and putting a new thing on the end, remove creates a copy without the thing. So filter is typically how we would do that. So basically, a remove would be a filter of the data. Allow the user to download the list as PDF. That's outside of the context of React. You could do it though. You could do it. Okay. So we have these initial items, but what we could also do is say, if there are items stored in local storage, let's use those instead. So we can say local storage.items. If that exists, then we're going to parse it as JSON, because local storage lets us store strings, so we would like stringify it there. So if local storage.items exists, we're going to do json.parse local storage.items. Otherwise, we do that. Now, is this going to... it technically returns the any type, so we're good to go. I mean, if I really wanted to be specific, I could say that this is a grocery item array, like this. Cool. So when the page loads, it's going to load it from local storage. Right now, because I haven't written to local storage, it's fine. And if you look in the web browser, if you look in storage, there's a local storage section, and that shows you the data that's been stored there. So just clear it out. I'm in development, so you can see that there was some like stuff for local storage here. Yeah, so local storage.get items. Honestly, I think TypeScript probably likes that better. Like this. But you can also just access it as a property like this. It works the same way. But now, anytime we change the list, I want to write it to local storage. So because we're doing all of that changing here, there's only one place where we modify the list in add item. Just at the end of add item, I'm going to write it to local storage. Is this the if statement? Yeah, it's the if statement. So after everything is done, put it in local storage. So local storage.items is going to be json.stringify. Oh no, it's not going to work now. I have to update my function because my setter functions, technically, I need the latest value. So actually, this is where there's probably a better way to do this. I'll look this up in a second. We're just going to put this inside of a set timeout to make sure we have the latest value of groceries. And then I don't know if React has like a next tick, or like I think there might be something built into React where we can say, hey, I want to do this after the updates have been flushed. Because that's kind of what we're doing here. Like I want this to run after set groceries is done, because technically after this line, the groceries variable hasn't been updated yet. And that has to do with like React's update cycle. But here, I only want to do this after the update has happened. Actually, no, I got an even better idea. We'll use an effect, and that gives us a reason to talk about effect. Okay, don't do that. Don't do what I just said there. Let's tap into this thing from React called useEffect. And useEffect lets us run some function potentially when some dependencies change. And so basically what I want to do is anytime groceries changes, I want to take the latest value and put it into local storage. So I'm going to do that here. So use effect, you can pass it a function, and you pass it an array of dependencies. So I want to be dependent on groceries. So anytime groceries changes, this function is going to run. And so what I'll just do is inside of here, I can set local storage.items, json.stringify groceries. And so now anytime it changes, whether I add something or update the quantity, this function is always going to run because I've specified the dependency array there. And that should be, oh, look, it did it. It did it already. Kind of like a watch, but use effect is, it's basically like one hook that can be used for multiple things. Like typically, like if you want lifecycle methods like component did mount or something like that, then you can actually pass an empty dependency array. And now this is kind of like a, what do you call it? A lifecycle hook that's like component mounted, sort of. It is. And you could use it in a lot of different ways like that. What about on load? This should still work because when the page loads, I think technically we're reading it in here. Here, let me delete it from local storage, refresh the page. And the thing is, when I refresh the page, it instantly puts it in because when I basically when the page loads, this state variable gets set, and then this use effect is going to get called for the first time. So technically, this is happening on page load as well. Yeah. Let's say every Monday I buy Apple, and Saturday I usually buy popcorn. If there's a pattern like that, would it be for the app to suggest that? Yeah, I mean, you could do a lot of things with like a grocery app. This is just demonstrating the concepts in React and TypeScript. But I think you got a good app idea on your hands. Like you look at user behavior to suggest what should go on the grocery list. Do any grocery lists do that? I don't know, but at this point we're good to go because now I can increase the quantity of apples. And now if I refresh the page, we've got 8 apples. Look at that. I could also add dog snacks. And now if I refresh the page, they're all there because it's pulling it in from local storage when the app loads. But $1 million idea. Yeah, all right, I'm gonna head out of here. Thank you everybody for watching. And one last plug for my course. My grocery does that for me in every newsletter. I guess so. Yeah, a lot of people look at the ad that you get that tells you what stuff is on sale and stuff like that. I appreciate that, X64. All right, so the whole reason I was talking about all of this and teaching you about React is because I have a new course. It is called React Roots. If you go to reactroots.com, you can learn all about it. And essentially, I presented a live course like 2 weeks ago to a set of students that were like in a Discord, basically watching the course live and asking questions. But now all of those lessons are available to watch as videos and all of the materials from the course. So the slides, the exercises, the examples, the project requirements, all of that is available to purchase for $35. So you get about 16 hours of on-demand video that teach you an intro to modern web development, intro to TypeScript, how React works and component hierarchies, talk about React forms, component lifecycle, hooks and API requests, React router and the context API, and also React styling solutions. So we cover all that stuff. Basically, the stuff that I showed you today actually isn't covered until lesson 4 and 5. And even lesson 6. So today was like a combination of those 4 lessons. I do my best to kind of take you from the ground up. So if a lot of the stuff you saw today was like completely new or, yeah, you were just like, oh, I'll never be able to learn that. I think I do a really good job of taking you from knowing the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to combining that knowledge with the basics of TypeScript and React to build React applications. Because we actually spend an entire day on TypeScript alone and an entire day on React and components alone before jumping into that other stuff. Yeah. We could do GIFs in a similar way. I guess I didn't think about it because so basically whenever I did the live course, there were a few people that donated so that other people could take the course for free. We could potentially do the same thing here where people can donate and then there are like basically free coupons that I can give away for the course. Honestly, let's do a giveaway right now. Why didn't I think of that? Let's do a giveaway. right here, right now. If you want this course for free, we'll do a giveaway really quick. Cool. Yeah, so there's no section on Redux. So we talk about the context API. And if you check out reactroots.com, there's a section, what will I learn in this course? It breaks down everything that's covered. And then for any given lesson, you can click into it and you can see all of the learning objectives for that given lesson. And so basically, if it's not listed here, the course doesn't cover it. However, on the last day of the course, we essentially do a whirlwind tour of everything in the React ecosystem beyond the basics. So we do cover the context API, which is similar to Redux, but it's kind of like built into React. We do cover that in the course. But in the real world, you typically reach for something like Redux Toolkit or Zustand or Jotai or something like that. So on day 8, this is like 2 hours of just me talking about all the other things that you might use. And there specifically is a section on state management and an entire section on Redux and what you might look into for Redux. So Redux isn't covered directly, but I do point you to some resources where you can dive into it if you want to. All right. Yeah, !enter in the chat if you want to win a free entry into the React course. So it's $35, but I know that this price is not global. So if you're on another part of the world, this might be really expensive for you. If you're in the US, this is less than Uber Eats. You know, so I mean, you can literally learn a life skill that can get you a job for $35 minimum, but regardless, !enter to win. Does this cover micro front ends? No. So the course is all about React, TypeScript, and then just like in the context of modern web development. All of the things you learn about React and TypeScript could be applied to things like micro front ends, but we don't get into that in the course. Yeah, and default was actually in the live course. It says everyone do it. It's a good course. Matter of fact, go buy it. Oh, thank you, default. I appreciate you. Yeah, so this is the course that was happening live on Twitch. So this is the one if you tuned in a week ago or a week and a half ago, all of those things that were being broadcasted on Twitch, you can now buy and then watch the courses, or watch the lessons as much as you want, and also get access to all of the exercises and materials and everything else. I'll also say check out my most recent YouTube video because I also just dive into like why I think this course is different than a lot of the courses that you might buy right now. So yeah. Okay. The node screen is so cool. Which one? This one? Oh, this is just a terminal. All right. You have 10 seconds left to enter. Can we do a stream about micro front ends? Ask me this upcoming Monday, because I'm going to do a variety stream or like a code Q&A. So if you ask me then, we can probably dive into it. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Let's see. All right. You have a 1 in 38 chance of winning. May the odds be ever in your favor. And the winner is RWXG A. Who? RWX Ganta. Congrats. Are you there? Are you there? And let me know. You won. You won. So what's your background, RWX Ganta? Have you tried to learn React before? Are you completely new? I'm curious. But yeah, I'll whisper you a code that you can use to unlock the course. So I don't forget. Cool. What's up, Sobar?
Thank you for your stream. Happy that I found this channel. Smiley face.
I appreciate you. Thank you for the donation. You're very kind. You've been studying front end for like 4 months. Perfect. This is the perfect course for you, I think. I mean, there might be some, like, if you haven't dove into some of the more specifics of JavaScript, you might need to brush up on those. But if you look at reactroots.com, I do have like a list of things that you should know. And also, if you're taking the course and you come across something that you don't understand, feel free to drop a message in the Discord. Someone will try to help. And for anyone else as well, the Discord's free to join. We have a help forum where you can ask for help and stuff like that. Please follow me all around the web. I'm over on YouTube. I'm on Twitter. And I actually, I'm going to be streaming this week over on my personal channel. So I have a personal channel, W3CJ. And I'm going to be doing IRL streams this week over there. Let me unpin that. So if you follow my personal channel, I'll be live almost every day this week, just doing hikes and kind of like exploring Colorado. Wait, what just happened? I lost the chat. Why not stream on this channel? There's some other videos that I don't want to take people away from, because there's the JS Nation and React Summit interviews, and then you also have this video advertising React Roots. I want that to be like the main thing listed right now. So yeah, that's my personal channel if you want to follow over there. I changed my mind, at least for now, because like I said, but yeah, I'll whisper you on Twitch right after this RWX content. All right, everybody, let's go on a raid. If you are a subscriber, you can use this raid message. If you are not, you can use this raid message. You can also come up with your own raid message.
Food.
Thank you, so. Are you saying we should give away one more? Is that what you're saying? That's awesome, Stony. Honestly, I think, how about we do this? Like, if there's, I don't know, if there's somebody in the Discord, somebody who's been like an active member of the community that wants to take the course, I could give them something. What should we do? What was that for, Stony? Was that to pay for the one that I'm giving away right now? Yeah. But thank you, Stony. You're very kind. But yeah, Shaw asks, will there be a new course coming soon? We'll see. If this course sells well enough, and I can see that there's a desire for people to purchase my courses, then yes, I'll work on a new course. If not, I gotta go find a full-time job. I can't give one away. Oh, thanks, Tony. All right, okay, we'll do another giveaway. We were about to leave, but we'll do one more giveaway. One more giveaway. Here we go. Exclamation mark, enter to win. Honestly, this is a good way to do it. I think if we're live and people want me to give away a ticket, then we can do this. Yeah, well, I mean, I hope not, Shaw, but it's kind of the reality of the situation. Like, I want to be supported by my viewers. Wait, you just entered to win and you gave one away? What are you doing, Stony? What happens if you win the one that you just gave away? But yeah, I want to be fully supported by my community and my viewers, but it's tricky. It's tricky to be fully viewer supported. Like most people that are successful as full-time content creators have sponsorships. They also have like merch stores with like highly custom merch and stuff like that. So I don't really do those things. I kind of want to be supported by like Twitch subs and Patreon and stuff like that, but it just really hasn't worked out. So these courses, like, basically that's my paid product, right? And that's the thing, is I do have YouTube monetization, but it doesn't make a lot of money, because you basically need to have millions of views. Not million. I mean, you could probably make a living off of like 30 to 40,000 views per video. Thank you, Default. We can do another one. Yeah, we can do another one. What was I gonna say? Yeah, so I mean, for instance, this video that has 1,000 views, I probably made $2 on that. And so like my videos don't get a lot of views, so it's like not making a lot of money. So it's tricky. All right, 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. We'll let this break go through. Yeah, I probably could find relevant sponsorships, but like, I mean, I guess I also haven't done a good job of communicating and basically like just talking about my views on like advertisements and stuff like that, and how like basically the entire web is just run on ads, which I don't like. I don't know. Here we go. Let's see who's gonna win. 1 in 42 chance of winning. May the odds be ever in your favor. Here we go. And the winner is CJ's Paradigm? Is that who it is? Yeah, congrats. Congratulations. Yeah, so and it varies the amount of money you get paid per 1,000 views, but basically that's how people look at income on YouTube, is like cost per mile or cost per 1,000 views. And so like I think a good cost per mile is like $8 per 1,000 views or something like that, but it varies. But yeah, congrats. Are you new here? You're new here. Welcome in, CJ's Paradigm. Well, actually, no, you've been following since August, but you only have 6 messages in the chat. Fascinating. Fascinating. All right, we'll do one more giveaway before I go. Hardcore lurker, I appreciate it. Congrats on winning. All right, mods, VIPs, do not enter to win. I will give you this course for free. Okay, so do not enter to win. I'm gonna send a message in the Discord after to get you the course for free. All right, everyone else, here's your chance to win the course for free. ! Enter in the chat. Shaw says your videos have quality content, but to get YouTube audience, you need to play the thumbnail and title game. Yeah, and I think that's the main issue, is like I potentially don't do that. Now I'm gonna work towards that, like starting next week. Basically, my strategy and my plan is every Monday I'll go live, answer questions, and also talk about like cutting edge tech and stuff like that. That live stream will be edited down into like 5 or so videos to be published throughout the week, and we can go from there. Because when my channel was growing, like back in 2020, I was posting like 3 or 4 like Twitch clips on YouTube like per week. So yeah, this time for sure, says Root Boy. All right, you have 10 seconds left to enter. And the winner is... You have a 1 in 45 chance of winning? Jeez. I feel like everyone's getting their alt accounts out now. I think it's Jerry XD. Is that who it is? Yeah, Jerry XD, congrats. Another name that I haven't seen in the chat before. Yay, you're the winner. Nice. I guess I have seen your name. Congratulations. That's fun. We got to give away 3 today. But now I need to go for real. So one last quick shout out. Check out reactroots.com. It's got my course. Also check out my latest YouTube video, which talks about what the course even is. You can find that over on my YouTube channel. We have a Discord if you have any questions or you want to just chat after the stream. And check the schedule, because the next live stream is planned for Friday. So I'll be live on Friday to work on an app called Listed. But in the meantime, I think almost every day this week I'm going to be streaming on my personal channel, W3CJ, to do some IRL streams. Yeah, and thanks again for those donations. That was really awesome. All right, let's get out of here. Again, those were the raid messages. I don't know who we're going to raid, but whoever we do, show them lots of love. Drop a follow if you like what they're doing. And wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And until next time, here's this. much.